Do you believe in fate? Well, I never did. I'm a 21-year-old college student studying finance and banking. So, yeah, numbers are my forte. Therefore, I'm a logical thinker. Horoscopes and chance meetings? As if. But then I met someone who changed it all. I'm Kai, by the way, and let me tell you my story. It all started one evening while studying. I got a serious craving for some Cheetos, so I went out to get some. That's when I saw a petite girl shouting at two huge guys in the park. "Hey, Bigfoot, did you really just litter? Pick it up now or I'll give you a good going over." Oh man, did this girl have a death wish? And was she drunk? The two guys didn't look happy. They approached her and one of them even raised his hand up like he was gonna hit her. But she quickly pushed his hand away, which only made him madder. Man, I didn't want to get involved in this. So I pretended I hadn't seen them and walked off. But then I was just a few steps away, I heard one of the guys scream. And the other guy said, "What the? Gross!" I could have just carried on walking, but nope, my curiosity got the better of me. So I turned around and saw that one guy was covered in vomit. Then the girl pointed at me and said, "Honey, there you are." Then she fainted. Huh? I didn't know her. I was staring at them, looking perplexed, when one of the dudes yelled, "Why are you still standing there? Quickly take your crazy girlfriend home if you don't want to taste my fist." I was so scared I hurried over and carried this girl off. I had no idea who she was or where she lived. This was crazy. I placed her down on a nearby bench and looked around for those guys, but luckily they'd gone. I didn't know what to do, so I left her there and walked off. But then I started to feel bad. Was I too heartless? What if something else happened to her? So I went back and gave the girl a piggyback ride back to my house. Jeez, she was so much heavier than she looked. As soon as I dropped her onto the couch, her phone rang, so I answered it. "Hello?" Then the person on the other end of the line asked, "Who are you? Where's my friend?" I muttered out my address and was about to tell her to come pick up her friend, but she already hung up. Why was she so rude? I'd almost bust my back carrying her friend to safety. How annoying. This night has been far too dramatic for me, and worse still, I didn't have any Cheetos. I decided to take a shower, then get some sleep. But as soon as I stepped out of the bathroom, the doorbell rang. I presumed it must be the girl's friend, so I answered the door. Then two cops immediately pushed me against the wall and handcuffed me. Before I could fathom what was happening, one of them said kidnap and assault accusations had been made against me, and I was escorted to the station. What? I tried to explain what happened, but they wouldn't listen to me. That night, as I sat in the cold, uninviting cell, I found myself regretting my kindness. I didn't sleep a wink. I just hoped the next morning came quickly, so that I could confront that girl about this false accusation. But before I could do that, the cops released me at dawn. The girl had sobered up and told them it was all just a misunderstanding. Well, luckily, she still remembered a bit, or else I didn't dare to imagine it anymore. I swore I would never get involved with anyone in need ever again. No good deed goes unpunished, for real. A few days later, when I was watching TV, someone knocked on my door, and you wouldn't believe it. It's the drunk girl. I looked at her suspiciously. "What are you doing here?" The girl didn't say anything. Instead, she coldly slipped past me and entered my house. Huh? What was she playing at? Then she glared at me and asked me about that night. After I told her everything that happened, she laughed. "Okay, I believe you. If I didn't, you'd know about it." She held her fist in front of me. I startled and almost fell off my chair. Then she chuckled. "Now I'm hungry. Go make your guests some food." What was with this girl? She was so direct and bold. I glanced at her and said no, but she continued. "If you don't, I'll go to the cops and change my statement." Then she got up to leave, so I quickly said, Okay, fine. Then reluctantly searched my cupboards for food. Trusted spaghetti, how you never fail me. So I prepared bolognese for us. While she was eating, she said, "I'm Nora, by the way, the best screenplay writer major in the country." She winked. She thanked me for the food, then left. Phew, that'd be it now, surely. Nope, turns out this was just the beginning. The next morning, she texted me, "Come pick me up for college ASAP, else I'm calling the cops." Was she being serious? Then she sent me another message with her address and told me to hurry up. I rushed over there and she got into my car, glared at me, and said, "You're late." And that's how I somehow became this Nora girl's servant. Her calls and messages could come at any time, and she would always force me to do things for her straight away. One time I was soaking in the bath when she texted and demanded I bring her some chocolate. Another time she called me at 2 a.m. and told me she was bored, so I had to come over and play some video games with her. I also became her unpaid Uber driver. Every day, from home to school and back. And it's inevitable that I overslept once, so Nora bombarded my phone with tons of texts and calls. I groggily answered, and she used her calling the cops threat again to force me to get there in 15 minutes. What a pain in the neck. Another time, I just stepped out of the house to go and hang out with my friends when Nora showed up and insisted that I had to take her to the cinema. She wouldn't take no for an answer, so I had to cancel on my friends and go watch some bland movie with her. Such a troublesome girl, right? But strangely, as time went by, I started to find Nora less annoying, and instead found myself smiling when she texted me or called. On the days when she didn't bother me, well, my mood seemed to dampen. Was I crazy? I mean, she was cute, very spontaneous, and, well, there was no one else quite like her. But then all of a sudden the messages and calls stopped. Did she not want me around anymore? I miss Nora. Many times I had to stop myself from calling her. I should be happy I was out of Nora's control, right? Then one day out of the blue, my phone beeped. It was Nora. Come to the Starbucks on Vincent Street. Move it. You have 5 minutes. Geez, that bossy tone again. Still, I immediately drove to the address. When I got there, I saw Nora with a guy and a girl. I walked over to them and just sat down. Nora held my arm. Honey, why are you so late? I stared at her in surprise. She smiled and turned to the other two. This is Kai, my boyfriend. What? Did I get it wrong? Did she just say I was her boyfriend? Then she said, Kai, this is my former bestie Kim and her boyfriend Greg, who's also my ex. Awkward, right? But I have you now, so we can all be friends. Reading the situation, I realized I had to go along with it. So I stroked her hair and said, yes, my honey muffin, anything you want. My cheesy lines seemed to work, as they both looked annoyed, then left. So I turned to look at Nora and stammered. Did you just say I'm your boyfriend? Nora said nonchalantly, yeah, isn't that okay? If you don't like it, forget it. Then she was about to leave. I pulled her hand and said, yes, of course, sounds great. So that's how we became an official couple. We went on a few dates, and she was her usual demanding self. Not that I'd want her any other way. Then one time, after a month of dating, Nora dragged me to a Swan Lake in a nearby park. She looked at me for a long time and then said, Kai, I'm studying abroad for a year. I leave tomorrow. I glared at her in surprise and asked why she hadn't told me sooner. She continued, I guess I didn't want to make you sad, and I don't know if your feelings are big enough, so write down your feelings for me and give them to me tomorrow. That night, I carefully wrote down all my thoughts and feelings for her. I still had hope that this 1 year of long-distance love would be over quickly. The next day, I drove her to the airport and handed her my letter. To my surprise, Nora also gave me a letter and told me over and over that I could only read it when I got home. Of course, I obeyed her. Then read it as soon as I passed my door, and whoa, I wasn't expecting this. In it, Nora confessed all this time she was just using me to get revenge on her ex, and took advantage of me to get over him. That night we had first met, she found out about him and Kim, but now she regretted how she treated me. At the end of the letter, she wrote, if fate wants us to be together, then we'll meet again one day. What? I was so shocked, so I called to tell her she didn't need to feel guilty and that I forgave her. I kept calling, but it didn't work. I also asked her friends, but no one knew how to reach her. She disappeared from all social media, and just like that, she vanished from my life. I missed Nora so much and found myself hoping that fate would reunite me with her someday. Then one time while I was surfing YouTube, this web drama called My Destiny Is Yours caught my eyes. Curious, I decided to check it out. And I watched wide-eyed as my story with Nora played out in front of me through each episode. This definitely was written by Nora. But how would she end it? It stopped at the part where the girl left and cut off all contact with the guy. An announcement popped up on the screen. The finale was launching at 9 p.m. tonight. I anxiously watched the seconds tick by. During the last episode, the two characters met up at a Swan Lake. I had a hunch, so without a second delay, I immediately ran to the Swan Lake in the nearby park. My heart flipped when I saw a girl standing there. It was Nora. Man, I ran so fast and hugged her. She hugged me back, then said, I was a little nervous you wouldn't see the movie. Then she smirked. But it doesn't matter anyway. I could have just texted you, come to the Swan Lake now, and you would have come, right? Then we both burst out laughing and continued to hug each other. Well, you see, fate brought me and Nora together, and this logic-loving skeptic is now a big believer in destiny. How about you? Have you found your destiny yet?
I was sitting on the couch watching a movie with my mom and dad, when suddenly the door slammed shut and we all turned our heads to see what happened. Yep, that's my big sister Taylor making an entrance. She slumped down on the couch and banged her feet on the coffee table. Then, as she scrolled through her phone, she looked up at us and huffed out, why are you all gawping at me like I'm an animal in a zoo? Am I not welcome here? Flustered, my mom immediately replied, No, sweetie, we're all delighted to have you home. Then she turned to me. Anne, darling, go and get your sister a drink. I jumped up to my feet and did as Mom asked. I know what you're thinking. Why is everyone letting Taylor get away with her Little Miss Rude routine? You see, after a huge argument with Mom, she left home at 18 and didn't come back for 7 whole years. Mom seemed so pleased to have her back, so I decided to ignore Taylor's attitude and just go along with it. That afternoon, Mom asked me to go to the grocery store with her so we could buy Taylor her favorite foods, as well as a welcome back gesture. Then we spent ages preparing this delicious meal. I excitedly rushed up to Taylor's room and knocked on the door. Taylor, dinner's ready! She shouted back. Go away! But it's hamburgers, and we got a special dessert, I replied. Poof! I hate hamburgers, and there's no way I'm eating some sugar-laden dessert. I went downstairs and told Mom that she wasn't coming. Mom shrugged and tried to act like it was no big deal, but I could see the sadness in her eyes. Dad tried reassuring her by saying, She probably just needs time to settle in. Yeah, she's probably just tired, I added. Mom forced out a smile and thanked us both. Then she prepared a plate of food and asked me to bring it to Taylor. I knocked on her door and told her the food was outside. She shouted back at me, Take it away! I don't want it! I left it outside of her room, but later on when Mom went up to bed, she saw the untouched plate of food still there. She picked it up and she took it downstairs and made out like it was no big deal. She wasn't fooling me. I could tell that she was biting on her gum to stop the tears. When I was little, I idolized my feisty, beautiful older sister. I loved how she wore clashing colors, the cool ways in which she styled her hair, and her carefree nature. The problem was that she didn't seem to like me. All she ever did was call me a brat, slam her bedroom door in my face, and tell me to stay away from her. 7 years on, and I thought things would be different. She wasn't a teenager anymore. She was an adult. But nope, it seemed clear that Taylor hated me even more than ever. I don't know why. Didn't she view me as a proper sister because we had different dads? You see, my dad isn't her dad, as her dad left when she was a little girl. Then Mom met my dad and had me. I don't know. I just couldn't figure out why she still disliked me so much. As the weeks went on, Taylor didn't seem to settle in at all. Instead, her behavior worsened. She played loud music until the early hours of the morning. She covered the house in her clothes, plates, cups, etc. She was the messiest person ever, and never cleaned up after herself. One time, I came downstairs to see her sitting at the dinner table, munching on the sandwiches I'd made for school. Then, when I politely told her this, she snorted and said, They're gross anyway, so I'm doing you a favor. Then she took Mom's car without asking her, and that meant she had to get the bus to work and ended up late. When Mom talked to her about it, Taylor just smirked, threw the keys at her, said, You're out of gas, then walked off. Mom tried to keep calm and distracted herself by tidying up. So I tried hugging her, but she shrugged me off and told me to go away. It felt like Taylor could get away with everything, while I was the one getting snapped at for nothing. Still, Taylor must have been through a lot, right? Maybe she just needed some time to reconnect with Mom again. Then peace would be restored to our household. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. I was reading in the living room when I heard voices coming from outside. I went to check it out and saw Mom and Dad talking to our new neighbor. They sure looked friendly. Then Taylor appeared and grinning said, Making friends with the neighbor, are you, Mom? Mom flustered out, Taylor, this is Bill, my old classmate and our new neighbor. Isn't it a small world? So, you're Mom's age? Whoa, you don't look like it. Hang on, didn't you say you had a crush on some Bill? I see why. It's just a shame you rushed into remarrying, isn't it? Mom and Bill gave awkward looks, while Dad was gritting his teeth. Uh-oh, he didn't look happy. Lovely to see you, Bill. Mom muttered out before she pulled Dad and Taylor inside. Behind closed doors, she frowned at Taylor, but she just shrugged and left. This must have been playing on Dad's mind, as that evening I overheard him question Mom. Why did you never mention this Bill before? Honey, it was just a slight crush when I was a teenager. You know how it is. Yeah, sure. Dad scratched his head. Now I was stuck in the middle of all this tension, and it was all down to Taylor stirring the pot again. Then a couple of days later, Dad came home from work and immediately started freaking out. The bank called. Apparently I spent an obscene amount of money in a watch store. Was it you? Mom shook her head. I didn't know anything either. Then Taylor piped in. Speaking of buying stuff, we do need to get something for Bill's birthday. I mean, he did invite all of us, so it'd be rude not to. Uh-oh. I know Mom hadn't got round to telling Dad that Bill had invited the whole family to his party yet. Dad gave Mom a skeptical look and snarled, Oh, I see. You used my money to buy your high school sweetheart an expensive watch? Listen to yourself! You're being ridiculous! I'm not going to stand around and listen to you accuse me like this. Then Mom stormed off. I really wanted to tell them how this morning I'd seen Taylor lingering in their room, looking suspicious. But how could I bring this up when the atmosphere was so intense? I decided I needed to confront the source of the problem, Taylor. When it was just the two of us, I said to her, I know it was you. I saw you snooping around Mom's stuff. She just shrugged and replied, Little Anne, seems you're smarter than you look. Yeah, I did it. So what? Why are you being so cruel? Mom and Dad might split up because of you. To my shock, she grinned and she said, Well, that is my plan. Why should you get to play happy families when I'm stuck here without my dad? What? How could she be so selfish? I couldn't hold back my frustration anymore. How can you do this to Mom? I won't let you get away with this. Is that so? And what exactly is a quiet mouse like you gonna do about it? Then she shoved past me and walked off. I know I needed to tell Mom, but this meant breaking her heart. I was going to do it. I just needed to find a gentle way of telling her that her beloved daughter got a buzz out of ruining her life. But then, before I had a chance to figure this out, something terrible happened. The next day, I arrived home from school to find Mom and Dad in the kitchen. Dad had his arms folded and a stern look on his face, and Mom was in tears as she sadly peered down at some papers on the table in front of her. Divorce forms. What happened? Anne, you have to believe me. I didn't cheat on your father. Then Dad interrupted her. Stop lying. I can see it with my own eyes. Then he slammed a stack of photos onto the table. In the photos, Mom was kissing Bill in a cafe. Huh? This didn't make any sense. I don't understand. I didn't meet Bill yesterday. I met my friend Sandra. But Dad just got even more furious. Then he pulled his suitcase towards the door. Stop lying. I can see what happened clear as day. I can't trust you anymore. Then he left. Mom cried harder after that. I didn't know what to say or react. I wanted to believe Mom, but those photos told me differently. Suddenly, the door opened and Taylor strolled in, looked at Mom crying her heart out, and gave a delighted smirk, then went upstairs. That's right, Taylor! She must have something to do with this. So I kept an eye on her. As I passed her room, I heard her on the phone. And without a second thought, I went to find Mom and dragged her upstairs.
Anyway, I owe you this time, dude. Yeah, those photos did the job. Yeah, thanks. Your Photoshop skills are brilliant. They look so real. My mom froze. A second later, she pushed the door open. Then Mom looked at Taylor and mouthed the word, "Why?" Taylor burst out laughing, shrugged, then replied, "It's payback for loving her." She pointed at me. "More than you love me. I want you all to suffer for living happily together. Why does she have you both, while I have nothing?" Furious, Mom slapped Taylor across the face and shouted out, "I'm ashamed of you, and I want you to leave right now." Taylor clutched her face and snarled back, "With pleasure. I hate it here anyway." Then she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I hugged Mom, and we both started crying. My happy family had been destroyed, and all because my sister was jealous and thought Mom loved me more. It was all so crazy. Then, later that evening, Mom received a call from the hospital. Mom's face dropped when she told me that Taylor had been in a car crash. We rushed to the hospital, and the doctor told us Taylor needed emergency surgery. But as she'd lost lots of blood, she needed a blood donation. The problem is that she had a rare blood type, but luckily, Mom had the same. So without any hesitation, Mom told the doctor to take as much blood as Taylor needed just to save her. After the blood donation, Mom didn't recover as fast as expected. Instead, she turned weak and needed medical care. So now, Taylor was in the surgery room, and Mom was in the intensive care unit. This was terrifying. What if I lost them both? I called Dad and spilled out everything that had happened to him, and he immediately rushed to the hospital. The wait was agonizing, but when the doctor came and told me they were both going to be okay, and I could go and see Taylor, I cried with happiness. Seeing her lying there bruised and afraid, I saw a vulnerable side to her that I hadn't seen before. So I took her hand and told her what Mom did for her. She looked embarrassed and turned away from me and muttered out how sorry she was for everything. After that, I visited them both every day. Dad came to the hospital too to check they were okay, but he waited outside of Mom's room as he knew she was still mad at him. Finally, Mom came home. Then a week later, Taylor was also discharged. We went to pick her up, and even though Mom and her didn't talk, I could feel the warmth between them. That night, we were having a cozy dinner. Taylor coughed to clear her voice, then said, "Guys, I want to say something. I know I've been a total brat, and I'm sorry. Mom, I thought you didn't love me because I was a reminder of your previous life, and I was ruining your new, happy family vibes. But now I realize how sacred the mother-daughter bond is. You never left me out. I left myself out. And Anne, I'm sorry I haven't been the big sis I should have been for you. I was jealous of you, but I was wrong to be that way. I hope you can both forgive me." Dad also apologized to Mom for misunderstanding her. We were all blubbering, and then we all hugged each other. We didn't need to say anything. Our actions were enough. We were family, and we loved each other. Families aren't always straightforward, but family is family, through the good times and the bad. And they're always worth fighting for, regardless of how out-of-this-world annoying they can be at times. Trust me, I know all about it.
It was just a regular school day, and I was sorting out my locker when suddenly I heard hushed whispers and noticed that everyone else was staring at something. Okay, so turns out it wasn't a something, but a someone, as this pretty girl strutted down the corridor like it was a runway or something. Ugh. Why was everyone gawping at her, rushing over to greet her, and sticking notepads in her face for her to sign? I hugged my books and muttered, "Geez, there's nothing special about her." So, my name's Lily, and I'm just a normal girl. My family, yeah, they're normal. My appearance, normal. And my social status, well, that's just normal too. I coast through life, and that's it. Nothing exciting ever happens to a regular girl like me. Oh, how I long to be the perfect looking girls on Instagram. They're so flawless in their clear skin, stylish clothes, and glossy hair. But those girls were different. They were from different worlds. Oh well, at least I still had my books, my bestie Sarah, and my cute boyfriend Brian. But this all changed when Stacy rocked up at school with her perfect looks and her "I'm so sweet and friendly" routine. Yeah, right. So, what if she had a prettyish face and a bit part in some TV show? Underneath the fake shine, she was clearly not all that. I walked into English class to see her sitting at the desk next to mine. Ugh, great. I couldn't even get to my seat because everyone else was surrounding her, asking her dumb questions such as, "What shampoo do you use?" and "Do you get snack breaks when you film your show?" Geez, give me a break instead. Then, when I finally managed to sit down, she smiled at me and in this sickly sweet voice said, "Hi, I hope it's okay I sit here. I'm Stacy." Yeah, sure. I forced a smile back, but on the inside, my anger was boiling over. Who did this girl think she was? So what if she was beautiful? I bet she only cared about her looks and never bothered studying. Yeah, everyone else would soon realize what a failure she was. Then, one time during recess, Stacy, the living Barbie doll, suggested we start a yearbook, and now everyone's treating her like she's achieved world peace or something. Ugh! You know the worst part of it? I've been saying we should start a yearbook for years, but no one listened to me. And guess who received so many welcome cards and love notes that they fell out of her locker and obstructed the hallway? Yup, Stacy. Gosh! It's been like weeks already. When will these stop? I hated how she thanked everyone and blushed and I needed to be around a sane person who didn't think the sun shone out of her. She was everywhere. It made me sick. But thank God for lunchtime. It became the only peaceful time of the day for me, when I could hang out with Sarah and not have to worry about Stacy. But, what was this? What was that Barbie doll doing sitting at our table and talking to my best friend? I walked over there and placed my tray down next to Sarah. "Oh, hi, Lily. Stacy just said the funniest thing." "Great," I muttered under my breath. Lunch was an ordeal. Sarah ignored me and kept on asking Stacy dumb questions like, "Is your co-star Kyle as handsome in real life?" And, "How do you style printed skirts with a colored tee?" Yawn! Later that day, due to a paint spillage in art, I was 5 minutes late out. Sarah had agreed to drive me home, but I went out to the parking lot. Her car wasn't there. Then I checked my phone and saw that she'd messaged me. "Where are you? I can't wait anymore. I'll leave first with Stacy. See you tomorrow, X." What? Is she ditching me to give that phony a ride? We had been friends since childhood. How could she be fooled for Stacy's act and just throw away our friendship like that? Angry, I messaged her back, "You abandoned me for Little Miss Popular? How could you? I get it. New one in, old one out. Well, thanks a lot." My phone buzzed with her reply. "Lily, you know it isn't like that. You live up the road from school while Stacy lives much further away and she needed to get back in time to get ready for her filming schedule." Madder than ever, I quickly typed out my reply. "Whatever. It's too bad you'll always be a nobody in her eyes and she's just using you for a free ride." Then I chucked my phone onto my bed. I'd had enough. Sarah had made her choice and it was to be friends with that fake over me. Sarah may have fallen into the Stacy trap, but at least I still had Brian, right? One afternoon, I was talking to him out in the schoolyard when Stacy tottered past. Even her try-too-hard walk was annoying. She smiled over my Brian, then she deliberately tripped up and dropped the books she was holding. I grabbed Brian's arm to stop him from going over, but he shook himself free from my grip and went over to her anyway. I watched him help her pick her books up, and then she blushed and squeaked out a "Thank you." She was the worst. When he walked back over to me with this big grin on his face, I couldn't take it anymore. So I blurted out to him, "How dare you leave me to help her?" He gave me a confused look.
"Lily, I was just helping her out."
Yeah, right. You knew she dropped them on purpose to get your attention, but you went over there to her anyway because you think she's prettier than me. He sighed.
You're being ridiculous. You know what? I can't deal with your selfish, jealous streak anymore. Let's just call it a day. We're done.
Then he walked off. I stood there watching him, expecting him to cool down and come back. Only he didn't. This was all Stacy's fault. She'd stolen my best friend and my boyfriend. No more. It was time to show her that she wasn't so perfect after all. I scrolled through her social media pages for ideas, and it soon became apparent that she loves boys with toned abs who ride motorbikes. How predictable. I discovered this website where I could hire a boy to play with her heart, then ditch her. It's about time she learned how much it sucked to be undesirable and worthless. Ha! I found the perfect guy called Josh. He was 19, a gym addict, and he had a motorbike. Whoa, he was expensive, but it would be worth it, right? I arranged to meet him at the local coffee shop, and geez, he was even more handsome in person. I wished I could use this money to actually make him mine. Sigh. So the deal is, he's gonna flirt with Stacy, make her love him deeply, and then break up with her. The next Monday, I walked out of school to see Josh parked up to the school gate, holding his helmet and looking like he belonged in a movie. Naturally, every girl was staring at him, but he made a beeline for Stacy. Then, just 1 week later, I saw him picking up Stacy from the school. Whoa! I knew that! I knew I had chosen the right person. Josh was such a lady killer. They looked super close, and I had to remind myself that he was just an actor and he was doing his job. Ha! She was gonna be so heartbroken. But a few weeks later, and he was still picking her up. Huh? Why hadn't he broken up with her yet? So I called him up and asked him what was taking him so long. He replied that he would do it soon. He was just making her fall for him more before he did it. Brutal. Only the weeks passed by and he still hadn't ended it. Then I was walking past the movie theater and I spotted them there, kissing. What? This was not the plan! Furious, I had arranged to meet him the next day at the coffee shop. He walked over and couldn't even meet my eye as he said,
I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I will refund you as soon as I can.
Why? Have you fallen in love with her or something? I said jokingly. There was a long silence. Then he looked down at the table and muttered out,
Yeah, I have.
Why was I the only one on the planet who saw how fake she was? Thanks to her siren ways, I lost my best friend, my boyfriend, and now my savings. This was it. I needed to confront her. The next day at school, I tried finding her, but she was nowhere to be found. Then, as I passed through the school garden, I saw her sitting there. Gotcha! It's time to tell her exactly what I thought of her. I stormed over to her and opened my mouth to speak, but why was she crying? When she saw me, she managed to smile and said, Oh, hi, Lily. Is there a chance you could help me? I stared at her with disbelief. Did she think I was under her spell and would do her bidding? But then I saw what she was crying about. In her hands was her English essay with a big F on it. So I replied, why me? You're so smart. You answer all the questions in class correctly. I don't want to be judged on my bad grades. That's why I left my last school. The other kids call me a brainless beauty. I moved here for a fresh start, and now I'm still failing. Okay, so in that moment, I realized that there were things I was good at. My grades were good, and I was pretty great at remembering facts. I'd just been so blinded by jealousy that I lost focus on these things and only saw what I didn't have. None of this was Stacy's fault. She never actually done anything bad to me. I'd made it all up in my head because I was jealous of her. So I sat down next to her and said, No one's gonna call you that because I'll help you study. You will? She gave me a hopeful smile and I nodded. Thank you so much, she flung her arms around me. So that's how Stacy went from being my enemy to my friend. She's actually a really sweet and kind-hearted girl. No wonder why everyone admired her so much. And I was wrong to judge her on her appearance and not give her a fair chance. She's still with Josh and she doesn't know that I hired him to break her heart. But hey, she now has a hunky boyfriend who adores her, so that could be considered compensation, right? Brian and I are still over, but thinking about it, maybe this was for the best. I know I overreacted, but he gave me up so easily, and well, I want to find a guy who won't do that. As for Sarah, I went around to her house with a bag full of her favorite candy, and I apologized for being a jealous jerk. Luckily for me, she forgave me. Now, Sarah, Stacy, and I have become good friends. Sarah and I both help Stacy with her studies, and she gives us fashion tips. And you know what? I've come to realize that I'm pretty after all. I just needed to discover my spark. So finally, I learned that no one's perfect. Perfection is just an illusion. The most important thing is that we feel happy with what we own and never stop improving ourselves. So just be you and let everyone else concentrate on being them.
Oops, still not it. Wow, why do they have an entire room just for shoes? That's mental. I muttered to myself as I closed the door. I swear, that was like the 20th door I'd opened. This place was insane. I had no idea which door would lead to my bedroom. To be honest, I've never been anywhere this lavish before in my entire life. Okay, it's now down to this door or that one over there. Wish me luck. But as I reached for the doorknob, I heard a voice. Hey, what prank you trying to pull on me again? I caught you red-handed this time, Gabby. Startled, I turned around, and oh wow, there was this super cute guy standing there, looking so smug with himself. So this must be Jaden, the annoying big brother that Gabby had told me about. Only he didn't seem annoying to me. But, right, I needed to stay in character, so I replied, yeah, guess I was just too busy thinking about stuff that I didn't watch where I was going. Take it easy, bro. Then I immediately fled to the other room while Jaden watched me in confusion. Phew, that was a close one. And, wow, was Gabby a princess or something? She lived in a literal palace. Look at her room. Oh, you must be wondering. Yes, I'm not Gabby. I'm Nancy. So how come Jaden didn't realize that I was not his sister? Now, let me tell you, that's one wild story. I was just a normal teenager, living my peaceful life in the Missouri countryside. My family doesn't have a lot of money, so I worked part-time in a nearby diner so I could save up for college. Yeah, it wasn't perfect, but I knew I was lucky to have my loving family. They're my everything. So, anyway, it wasn't uncommon for schools from St. Louis to arrange trips out here to show the kids what country life was like. And on days like those, the diner could get pretty hectic, and today was no exception. By the time my shift finished, I was a tired, sweaty mess, so I took the scenic route home to unwind. That's when I heard this girl screaming for help. She must have slipped and fell into this ditch. I quickly found a big branch to help pull her out of there. Then she brushed the dirt off her as she said, "Thanks." But as she looked up at me, OMG! We both jumped up in such a fright that we almost stumbled back into the ditch. She looked exactly like me. I pinched myself to check I wasn't hallucinating or something. I mean, I was super exhausted from work. We stared at each other gormlessly for a bit. Then she suddenly reached out her hand and slapped me. Ouch! I raised my eyebrows at her, and she just grinned back. Oops, sorry. Just checking this isn't a dream. That's when I saw it. Her bracelet. The pendant on it was a strange shape. A strange shape like mine. I held out my wrist to slot my bracelet's pendant into hers, and it formed a butterfly. What's more, carved on the back of it was our birthday, November 3rd. Oh my God! No wonder why! I always asked my parents why they bought me such an ugly bracelet. Turns out it was 2 halves of a whole? She shrieked. So, do you think we're twins? I was still in shock, but I managed to mutter out, "Must be." She excitedly clapped her hands together, then pulled me into a hug. She said her name was Gabby, and her field trip was so dull that she wandered off, then ended up lost and stuck. Then I told her about my loving family,
and she told me about her city life. I thought her life sounded awesome, but she didn't think so. Nah, it's seriously so boring over there. I just want a happy, drama-free life like yours. It makes sense now. I see why my parents love my brother more than me. I'm obviously adopted. But hey, at least you have your friends and get to go to a good school. School? That's the worst part. I hate it. Then she paused and turned to me. Nancy, I have an amazing idea. How about we switch places? This was crazy. An hour ago, I thought I was an only child, and now I was staring at my twin. Gabby seemed adamant switching places was the best idea ever, as I'd get a taste of the city life while also helping her ace her upcoming exams. This did sound tempting. I mean, it wasn't every day your long-lost twin appeared and offered you the adventure of a lifetime, right? We didn't have much time to discuss it anymore, so we quickly switched clothes, phones, and further instructions about anything else would be discussed later over the phone. Then I showed her the way to my house, and I headed toward the crowd of noisy students lining up for the bus back to the city. Suddenly, a girl tapped me on the shoulder and in an annoyed tone said, where have you been? Blonde hair, a pink hairband, and wearing a choker with a heart pendant on it. Yep, this must be Katie, Gabby's best friend. I followed her onto the bus, then yawned and told her I was exhausted. I feigned sleeping for the duration of the journey back so she wouldn't start any more convos with me. So after that, things went by smoothly, until I got home and didn't know where I normally sleep at. But it's okay now, as I'm safe in Gabby's bedroom. The butler did knock on the door to ask me to come down for dinner. I know, the fact they have a butler is crazy. But I just lied that I'd eaten loads on the field trip. There was no time for food now. I needed to learn as much as I could about these people. I searched her room and looked through her yearbooks, family photos, anything. I thought I was ready to go to school as Gabby tomorrow. But, well, as if it was that simple. The next morning, I nervously came downstairs to go to school. And of course, I had to face the entire family now. Upon seeing me, the small talks all came flying at me. How was yesterday's trip, dear? I managed to mumble out, it was all right. Then suddenly, a hand rubbed my hair. Hey, I'm taking your PB&J, okay? You won't eat it anyway. I turned to look and saw him grinning at me before he headed outside. Oh gosh, I thought I'd melted into a puddle. He's so cute. I just wanted to follow him. But then Dad cleared his throat. Gabriella, can we please make it a day free of complaints from your teachers? Oh God, Gabby, what had you possibly done? I gulped back, nodded in response, then hurried out of there. I awkwardly lingered in front of the mansion. This was the spot where the bus dropped me off yesterday, so hope this was how it worked. Then suddenly, a scary-looking guy pulled up on the other side of the street and yelled at me. Babe, what are you doing? Get in! Me? I was his babe? Oh, so he was Dylan, my sister's boyfriend. I walked over and reluctantly climbed on the back seat. Hey, what's wrong? Are you still mad at me for letting you go on the field trip alone? Come on, you said it was okay. I didn't know what to say to him, so I stayed quiet and stared out the window. Come on, babe. I mean, this is dumb. We both know how sitting in the back always gives you travel sickness. Gosh, I really needed to say something to shut this guy up, huh? No, it's totally fine between us. It's just that I feel a bit under the weather. I need a little rest, that's all. And it's more spacey here. Well, that seemed to quiet him down, but I kept on catching him giving me odd looks in the rearview mirror. Look at him! Ugh! Gabby and I might be twins, but our taste in guys couldn't be any more different. Dylan looked like the bad boy type. Green hair, a nose ring, and drove some flashy sports car, while I prefer sweet and funny guys, like Jaden. But I didn't want to accidentally ruin my sister's relationship either, so when we got to school, I had to give him a peck on the cheek to make sure that we were cool. Yuck. his cologne stank. Luckily, I met Katie in the parking lot, so I followed her to class. Things were going great. At least, they were, until we got to Spanish class. The teacher, Mrs. Harrison, gave me this judgy look right from the moment I walked in. Turns out, Gabby hadn't handed in her homework, and she spent the whole of the last session painting her nails. Mrs. Harrison demanded to check my homework today. Well, of course, I didn't know I had homework. So, in a disappointed voice, she said, "Gabby, it's been 2 years and you still don't know how to conjugate any single verb. Are you proud of that?" Suddenly, I heard Katie whisper, "But at least she knows how to dress, Mrs. Harrison. Your sweater looks like it should have been thrown out 2 years ago." Then some of the class giggled. Oh my God, Katie? That was so rude. But luckily, the teacher didn't hear that. I quickly apologized to Mrs. Harrison and told her to just give me a pop quiz to make up for my missing homework. She did. And to her, and the whole class's total surprise, I slayed all the questions. After class, I told Katie that her comment about Mrs. Harrison wasn't cool. Laughing, she replied, "Geez, why are you so uptight today?" But on seeing my unfaltering expression, she quickly changed the subject. "You've still got to help me with the plan, okay? You promised." She winked at me. "What? What plan?" In confusion, I faked a smile at Katie. "Oh, don't you worry, girl. I got it all set." That night, Gabby called me and we updated each other on our first day. Things went better than expected. Apparently, she loved it there, and she felt so warm and connected with Mom and Dad, and she was sure that they were our real parents. She also enjoyed feeding the chickens and apple picking in the backyard. However, she did almost get me fired from work, as she didn't know how to use the oven, but she managed to charm her way out of it. I told her how I'd handled the Dylan situation and made peace with Mrs. Harrison. But oh, Gabby, Katie did mention to me about some plan? What is it? Oh, yeah, I promised to set her up with Jaden. I guess you'll have to carry it out for me now. My heart sank as I said, "Jaden? As in, your brother Jaden?" "Yeah, now not biologically. It's no wonder I just couldn't get along with him. Not like us, right?" I forced a laugh and changed the subject. But, oh no, Jaden was far more suited to me than rebellious Katie. But, okay, this was Gabby's life, so I needed to make sure I didn't mess it up. And maybe, when this twinning truth broke out, I'd get my chance with Jaden. For now, we agreed to continue living each other's lives. I suppose it was pretty easy, seeing as all Gabby seemed to do was hang out with her friends and avoid doing her homework. The only part I didn't like was setting Katie up with Jaden. And that's when things got complicated. Will we ever tell everyone the truth? Or this life swap is too much fun to stop? Stay tuned for part 2 to find out. Job hunting is so not fun. But my current job as a waitress isn't working out. There's too much standing around. I now have a blister on my foot. Totally disgusting. Ooh, hang on. This one sounded interesting. Retired couple seeks a well-mannered female housekeeper to attend to their country estate. Board and meals included. This job sounded like such an easy ride, so I called them immediately. And yep, they invited me over. So, this is their country estate. Geez, it's basically a castle. The owner, Mrs. Harris, answered the door. She seemed friendly enough, and she gave me a tour of the place. I expected her to interview me or something, but in the end, she just showed me a bedroom, then said, "I hope this room is adequate enough for you. You'll start tomorrow. My husband and I are away from home quite often. All you have to do is keep an eye on the place and play with our son, as he does get lonely." Huh? I didn't see anything about babysitting in the job description. But I mean, come on, how bad could playing with some little kid be? And who cares? This was the perfect job. They were paying me a high salary to do practically nothing. Not even cleaning or cooking, as they had many maids for that. This was over the top. Some people had way more money than sense. I needed to hurry up and move in. For the first few days, the Harrises weren't around, and I didn't see any signs of a kid. I mooched around the mansion and explored the grounds. Then one day, I was on the 3rd floor inspecting a funny-looking portrait when I heard footsteps behind me. Startled, I turned around and saw a guy holding a teddy bear and licking a lollipop. He was looking straight at me. Okay, weird. Hello? And you are? I asked. Fred, he said, with a very childish tone. Huh? He was like almost 30 already. How come he spoke like that? Fred wants to play. He raised the teddy bear up to my face, like an invitation. All right, I shrugged, then followed him into his room. Whoa, it was like a toy store in there. He wheeled a toy truck over to me, so I took it and made car sounds as I moved it around. He clapped his hands and cheered excitedly. I ended up spending the rest of the day there playing these childish games with him. Then when I looked up, I saw Mr. and Mrs. Harris standing in the doorway, and beside them was a cameraman who was filming Fred and me. They asked to talk privately, so I followed them out to the garden. Mr. Harris started. Fred is our only son. Past traumas affected him, so now, although he appears to be an adult man, he still acts like a kid. Now that made sense. And too bad for him, though. The story continued that Mr. and Mrs. Harris used to work in the media. A few years ago, they decided to record Fred's daily activities, then edited them into videos to make a weekly series on social media. Wow, a show about a man acting like a child? How strange. The audience loves watching Freddie. Mrs. Harris giggled, but then she immediately changed her tone. But I do worry they'll soon get tired of watching just him. I think he should have a friend. It will help the show, and it'll be good for Freddie as he'll feel less lonely. I wonder. She looked at me all wide-eyed. Noticing my skeptical look, Mr. Harris jumped in before I even opened my mouth. We'll pay you double. Whoa, what a deal! I mean, it's not like I needed to be an award-winning actress or anything to be in this type of videos. Most importantly, that amount of money was insane. Only an idiot would have turned down an offer like this, right? So I started being friends with Fred. We shared toys, played in the garden, and did all those childlike things together. To be honest, I found him really sweet, and I felt sorry for him. Whenever he saw me, he beamed at me, and usually handed me his favorite toy, and that made me feel good. So, okay, the cameraman followed us around all day, but I soon forgot he was there. And I also never check out the final videos, as I found it cringy to watch myself. Then one day, the Harrises sat me down to talk to me again. Mrs. Harris looked at me as she said, You may consider Freddie as a child, but he is now a 27-year-old man, handsome and physically healthy. He likes you, and he has every right to date. Then after showing me several comments on the internet, they told me frankly that the views would be higher if I became Fred's girlfriend. So, is it some kind of real-life fairy tale? A kind-hearted girl falls in love with a mentally disadvantaged man? Jeez. But I'm not into him that way. I groaned, pulling a wry face. Darling, she touched my arm. It would only be for the camera, and it would make Freddie so happy. And of course, you'll be generously compensated, Mr. Harris added. Oof, that much money? Who could say no? And it was only acting. Besides, Fred enjoyed making the videos, right? They must have had millions of views for the Harrises to throw money around like this. So I quit hesitating and agreed. They handed me an improv script and told me to do exactly whatever was written in it. The more convincing my performance, the higher my salary. Oh man, not long ago, I didn't have a cent to my name, and now I had thousands of dollars in my bank account. I could go to college, get myself an apartment, etc. A bright future was ahead for me. In the first video, I sat down next to Fred, took his hand, but he immediately started a thumb war. So I gave up on the hand-holding and softly said, "Fred, I love spending time with you. You're so sweet and kind, and I have feelings for you." He let out an excitable shout. Then he pretended to be an airplane and did loops around the room. The next few videos didn't get any easier. When I tried to snuggle up to him, he'd whack me with his giant teddy bear. And when I went in for a kiss on his cheek, he pressed a toy car into my face. That was why when I read the next script, in which we were going to have a romantic dinner together, I couldn't help sighing and rolling my eyes. But it was work, so I put on a pretty dress and walked into the dining room. It was decorated with flower petals on the table, and there was mood lighting. "Delicious?" I asked while he was stuffing his face. He nodded, threw down the silverware, and clapped his hands. "Fred cooks for Lynn eats!" Fred chewed as he spoke, spitting food all over. Man, this was so hilarious, I couldn't help laughing. Then he walked over to me and hugged me tightly. Oh my God, he got food stains all over my dress! I looked straight into his eyes and thought, yeah, I did like him as a cute little brother. Poor guy. If only he wasn't so unfortunate. Suddenly, I felt his hands tightening around my waist. Stunned, I pushed him back and feigned interest in my food. A huge amount of money was transferred into my account that month, but I didn't feel so youthful anymore. So I started going off script and doing things that I thought were good for Fred. I used his toys to teach him math skills. I read him good books, and I showed him how to make cupcakes. One evening, when I was walking back to my room, Mr. Harris blocked my path and, scowling at me, said, "What the hell are you playing at? Did you even read this week's script?" I tried pushing past him, but he grabbed my arm. "You're causing our viewers to leave. I'm paying you less this month." I shook myself free of his grip and replied, "Money? Is that all that matters to you?" Then I rolled my eyes and returned to my room. That night, I ended up looking up the videos. In one of the older ones, Fred was in a suit and looked super uncomfortable. Every time he tried to loosen the tie or unbutton the shirt, a stick went in the frame and hit him in the butt. After a few tries, Fred threw himself on the floor and started having a tantrum. There were so many comments like, "OMG, this is way too hilarious," and "Grow up, man," or "Don't, for our entertainment." Oh no, people were so mean. Fred didn't choose to be like that. The Harrises were using their own son to get rich by making fun of him. Poor Fred. I had to stop this. I packed my bag, stormed into the room where the Harrises were watching TV, and said, "I like Fred and still want to be his friend, but I'm not going to be part of this freak show anymore. I quit. And if you care about Fred at all, I suggest you do the same." I expected them to beg me to stay or something, but Mrs. Harris just snarked. "All right then. If you want to quit, just leave. Why bother making a fuss about all this? Girls like you won't be hard to replace anyway." How ruthless were they? I was fueled with anger. So I left their dumb mansion immediately and didn't look back. And guess who is cooking in my kitchen while I'm telling you this crazy story? Yep, it's Fred. A few weeks after I left, I answered the doorbell to find Fred standing there. Crazier still, he was acting completely normal. Turns out the Harrises were neglectful of Fred, so he was raised by an old butler, like Bruce and Alfred. When Fred was 15, his parents ended up jobless and in debt. Fred told me, "I wanted their attention so badly, so I started acting like I was still a little kid." But then his cute, silly actions meant his parents came up with their crazy video idea. They lied about Fred's age since he does look a bit older, then made him solo act Dumb and Dumber on camera for years. At first, I thought this would be a good way to help my parents overcome their financial difficulties. But I soon grew tired of pretending, and they had more than enough money. So I told them to stop, but they refused. Then he told me that the night I left, he got into a heated argument with his parents and told them he wasn't doing the show ever again.
I don't know anyone else, and have feelings for no one else. But you,
he confessed. And, whoa, turns out he's only 19. So, I let him stay with me, and, well, we started dating. Like real romantic dates, and a real romantic grown-up relationship. I still have a lot of money in my account, and Fred took all the money he deserved from his parents, then moved in with me. I'm starting college next month, and I can't wait. Meanwhile, Fred has found an online course and is waiting for the results from the new part-time job. Also online. Well, he's gotta hide for quite a while, since his face is all over the internet. But our future together is really wide open this time. Now, excuse me, we have a dinner date to enjoy. This is a real-life fairy tale, baby. I was sitting in the reception with an ice pack pressed to my head, waiting for my mom to come pick me up. Ugh, that stupid rogue ball during PE! Oh, there she was, glamorous as always. She rushed over and hugged me, checking if I was okay. Then she guided me out of there and along the hallway. A group of teenage boys stopped dead and stared open-mouthed as we walked by. One even wolf whistled. Even my math teacher, who was walking out of his classroom, started readjusting his tie and waved over at us. No, those reactions weren't for me. They were for my mom. She's just too beautiful to ever be fazed by how men act around her. On the way back home, I got a message from my bestie, Minnie. I bet men would all compete to win a date with your mom. She was like a goddess earlier. I giggled to myself. The thought of a bunch of adult men competing to win my mom's affection amused me. I couldn't understand why my mom was still single. She's gorgeous, successful, and a really kind person. And I guessed she'd enjoy having a man about the place, right? Okay, so Minnie wasn't being serious, but the more I pondered on it, the better the idea became. So I messaged her back. Tell me more about that contest idea of yours. Then one time, when my mom was away on a business trip, I invited Minnie around. We spent all evening posting about the auditions online and handing flyers out around town. Soon, the applications came flooding in. Oh boy, some were handsome, but some, yeah, they were so not. Delete, definitely. We got everything ready to spend hours sifting through all the applicants. Gotta be strict, 'cause the chosen one had to be perfect like Prince Paris to match with a woman like my mom, whose name is actually Helen. Finally, we whittled them down to a top 10 list, and we invited them along to round 1. Fitness is important, right? Well, at least that's what Minnie says. So we set up an assault course at the local park. All the guys showed up, including Mr. Swanson, my gym teacher. Uh-oh, awkward. But hey, I suppose he was good-looking and a physically strong man. Firstly, they had to run a complete lap of the field, as stamina was important. Then they had to lift 120 pounds of weights, equal to my mom's weight. She sure needed a man who could lift her over their shoulder like they do in the movies. OMG. Watching them warming up was hilarious. One man showed up in this Lycra one-piece and started doing jumping jacks, and another guy was doing some weird karate moves. All of them completed the running section. Well, just about. But some of them struggled to lift the weights, including Mr. Swanson, who had turned bright red and was groaning. Minnie and I covered our mouths to hold back our laughs. Farewell, Mr. Swanson. That was for being mean to us in gym class. Finishing round 1, we eliminated 3 men. Too bad, as they were handsome. On to round 2. It's not all about brawn. Brains are important too. That was why Minnie and I spent 2 days noting down all the questions for our Who Wants to Be My Mom's Boyfriend quiz round. My mom deserves a man who knows everything. We set out a row of kid-sized chairs in the backyard. Then we walked along the line and fired questions at them. Suddenly, one man stood up and furiously said to the others, "Why are we letting some kids test us like this?" Then stormed off. Minnie whispered, "Not surprising, really. I saw him scratching his head at the other questions. We then eliminated those with the lowest score, leaving just 5 potentials to go through to round 3. That night, I was about to grab something to eat, and I saw my mom standing in the kitchen. She was back earlier than I thought. She was looking down at the pile of profiles on the table with in and out stamps on them. Confused, she asked me,
Zara, what is the meaning of this?
Mom, we think you've been lonely for a long time, so Minnie and I are doing a contest to find you a man. I gave my best puppy-eyed look. Actually, tomorrow is round 3. It'd be perfect if you could join us for the interview. Please? Mom glared at me and shook her head. But I kept insisting until she sighed and said, Fine, I'll come. I howled with joy and hugged her. Bring on round 3, the interview stage. Minnie and I asked the questions while Mom, Queen Helen, watched from her throne. The first one, Tyler, waved over at Mom and said,
Helen, do you recognize me?
My mom just smiled politely. Turned out, Tyler had a big crush on my mom since they were both in high school. Then when Minnie asked him to show us his talent, he ignored her and said to Mom,
Oh, Helen, I've never stopped loving you. You remember back then when we...
I shouted out, interrupting him. Not impressive enough. Next! The second one stepped in. Simon. Ooh, he was wearing a suit and seemed like a gentleman.
Maybe you don't recognize me,
Simon spoke up. My mom's smile disappeared.
I'm Simon, the head of the engineering department in our company.
Simon must have had a crush on my mom for a long time, but she sure didn't even know he existed. His talent performance was to help fix 2 faulty computers in my house. Useful, but honestly, it wasn't rocking enough. Plus, him being my mom's colleague was awkward. Duh! As soon as the third one, James, walked in, Mom sat up with a surprise. Helen, I miss you so much, he sincerely said. Mom immediately motioned me to eliminate him, then got up and went inside. It was revealed that James was her ex-boyfriend from their college days. Okay, creep. Oh well, 2 guys left. The next one was so dreamy. He looked like he belonged in a boy band. Minnie and I clasped hands excitedly.
Hi, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you, ladies.
Daniel's smile totally melted Minnie and I.
I don't know if you ladies know, but I live on this street.
Seriously? How did I not know a handsome neighbor like this? He then took out his guitar and played a song. OMG, this guy deserves straight A's. But he was only 21 years old. That was way younger than my mom. Andy was the last one of all. Very handsome and sweet. For his talent, he'd make us cupcakes.
These lovely little ones are specially made for you, lovely ladies.
He smiled. Oh, how charming. In the end, Minnie and I sat together and discussed our options. Well, the result was quite obvious. I excitedly announced, We've made our decision. My new daddy, the chosen Prince Paris to my mom Helen, the champion is... Andy! He looked chuffed and grinned over at my mom. Still, my mom maintained that polite smile and remained silent. Yay! This was great! I finally had a father. Moreover, this one makes awesome food. I couldn't wait for their first date. Eek! Now let me tell you, the date went amazingly. Andy took my mom and I to this fancy restaurant in town. He pulled the chairs out for us, ordered food he thought we'd like. Then he started serving us the coolest stories ever. He really is a gentleman. If I had a boyfriend, I would want one like him. After we finished, I crossed the street to buy ice cream and caught them hugging. Perfect! Looked like things went well. Oh, Andy! I could already imagine the life where he was family. That night, Mom sat down next to me while I was texting and watching TV.
Zara, I'm glad to see you had fun these past few days.
I hummed, still texting.
But did it ever cross your mind that what you did was for you and not for me?
Excuse me? I worked hard to make her happy, and she could say that to me? I took my eyes off the phone and stared at her.
Sweetie, you only picked the man you liked the best. It's your choice, not mine. I appreciate what you did, but relationships are not that simple.
I tearfully raised my phone and shook it, saying that I already invited Andy over at the weekend to teach me how to cook. Mom smiled.
No problem. Andy and I already talked and decided to stay friends. So, this weekend's plan remains the same.
I lowered my head and apologized to her. Mom was right. I'd picked my favorite without considering her feelings. But, yeah, it wasn't all bad, as after that, Andy kept coming over most weekends. Took me to go buy groceries with him, and then cooked for us. He taught me how to cook and bake, and we even chatted about the goofy boys at my school.
Seriously, if that Richard wants a chance with a pretty girl like ours, Zara, then he should be stronger,
Andy said, while his hands were still cooking gracefully. Yeah, Richard. Burn! Speaking of being burnt, ouch! Yes, it was me who had just burnt myself in the oven thinking about all this. Andy rushed over, guided my hand over to the faucet, and ran it under cold water. Oh, geez. He was so caring and thoughtful. Unlike those childish guys my age. Soon it was my sweet 16th. And of course, Andy was the chef for dinner. Mom and Minnie just had to light up the birthday candles. Then, as I watched Andy through the candlelight, I knew I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I was in love with him. I spent days planning for the best confession to him. Only, before I could tell him how I felt, Mom told me,
Andy just called me and said he'd been offered the head chef job in New York. He's leaving next week.
What? No! Why? It was Andy, the first love of my life. That was so unfair. We didn't get any chance to see him until the day he boarded. Mom and I went to the airport to see him off. I couldn't bear watching him go, so I glued my eyes on the floor while he was still excitedly chatting with my mom.
Zara, use what I taught you to take good care of your mother, okay?
Andy winked and patted my head. I couldn't help myself any longer. I burst into tears, hugged him, and sobbed out, Andy, I love you. Please don't go. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. For a moment, the whole airport, including my mom, was stunned. All eyes were on me. Andy immediately pushed me away, clearing his throat, and said,
Zara, you're a lovely, pretty, sweet girl. You will find a suitable boyfriend.
Then he turned to Mom.
Best wishes to you both. Bye, Helen. Bye, Zara.
And I watched him walk away with tears streaming down on my face. Well, it's been 6 months since then, and I eventually realized that my feelings for Andy were just a teenage confusion. I did love him, yes, but it was more like admiring and respecting him as a father figure. Anyway, I do have a new dad now, but it was my beloved Mom's choice. His name is Harris, and he might not be as good a cook as Andy, but he's a nice guy, and he makes her happy. And of course, we still keep in touch with Andy. Both his career and his love life are doing really well in the Big Apple. I've learned my lesson. Life's full of choices, some good and some not so good. But sometimes, however much we want to, we can't make choices for other people. Instead, we just have to take a deep breath and let them make their own. High school has started, and it's going pretty well. I'm currently seeing this very cute guy in math class. Guys my age are not that bad, to be honest. Minnie's not so bad on herself either, as she's now dating that musician Daniel and enjoys touring around with him whenever he plays at concerts. What a happily fulfilled ending for everyone, isn't it?
Now, where is her turquoise scarf? That will definitely complete my look. I was raiding Mom's closet to find it when I accidentally dropped a belt on the floor. But strangely enough, it made a really weird sound. So I gave it a few knocks. Wait, it did sound like the ground was hollow. I took a closer look. And oh my God, there was a hidden hatch or something in my mom's closet. Of course, I had to figure this out. So after a few attempts, I finally managed to open it and found a big wooden box. Why was she keeping something a secret from us? I took a deep breath and I opened the box. There were some old pics of my mom when she was younger, an old teddy bear, and some cassette tapes. Why on earth did she have to hide these? I dug even deeper and found a stack of letters. All of them were from the same address. Hang on, I knew that place. It was an orphanage just outside the city. So far, nothing made sense to me, so obviously I had to read them. They were all from this orphanage sister called Anna Maria. She kept writing about some girl named Eliza, and the more I read, I eventually realized that this girl, Eliza, was my mom's daughter. That meant I had a half-sister? I couldn't believe it. And from the sounds of things, my mom hadn't seen Eliza since the day she'd dropped her at the orphanage. So my mom didn't even know what she looked like after all these years? This was insane! How could mom have done this? Not to mention the fact my dad is a politician, so I'd been raised to always be a good person, just like them. But after what I just found out, I didn't know what to believe anymore. This is so absurd. But one thing was for sure, I had to find Eliza. The next day after school, I went to the orphanage. I told Anna Maria everything, and then she said that Eliza had left when she turned 18, but that she came back every weekend to help out. She then gave me Eliza's home address. I followed Google Maps and ended up in a seriously creepy neighborhood. As I knocked on her door, a billion questions ran through my head. What if she didn't want anything to do with us? What if she hated me because I stole this great life that was supposed to be hers? But there was no backing down now. As soon as the door opened, I froze. Could this really be my half-sister? Standing there was this tall, mysterious-looking girl. I was trembling as I said, "Hi, are you Eliza?" She just gave me a skeptic look, then replied, "Why? Who are you?" I couldn't hold back my tears and said, "I can't believe I found you. I'm Alicia, your half-sister." Eliza looked shocked and then said, "Oh, okay, calm down. Come on in, then we'll talk." I sat on the couch and told her everything. Then she began to tell me how miserable her life was, how she worked 4 jobs and it still wasn't enough to pay the bills. Gosh, I felt so guilty hearing all of this. How was it fair that I had a carefree, happy life and she'd been left all alone? I couldn't leave Eliza like that. I had to do something. After that, I rushed home and dragged Mom to my room so I could speak to her privately. I confronted her, and at first she denied it, but she eventually burst into tears and admitted everything. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the whole story. When she was 18, she'd given birth to Eliza, but Eliza's dad wouldn't take any responsibility. So my mom decided to raise Eliza on her own. It was tough for her, as she didn't have a decent job. Then after about 6 months, my dad appeared and showed interest in her, and because he came from a wealthy family, my mom jumped at the chance to be with him. However, she thought that if he knew about Eliza, he wouldn't be keen. So with a heavy heart, she decided to send Eliza to the orphanage. Ever since then, she'd sent a letter to Anna Maria every year on Eliza's birthday. But she asked her not to send any photos of Eliza, as it was too painful to see. I couldn't believe my mom gave up her daughter for money. I begged my mom to meet up with Eliza. She at least owed her that. I explained how miserable Eliza's life was, and how she didn't deserve that. Finally, my mom agreed. So the next day, she picked me up from school and we went to Eliza's. As soon as my mom saw her, they were hugging and crying, and my mom was shocked at the shabby state of Eliza's place and immediately told her to come live with us. Oh, wow, Mom! I'm glad that we're reunited, but wasn't that decision too impulsive? What about Dad? Well, of course, he was super shocked. My mom sat him down and explained who Eliza was, but he didn't take it well, and they ended up getting into a huge fight, which resulted in my dad moving out. I couldn't believe it. So, from that moment on, it was just me, my mom, and Eliza. I missed my dad so much, but it felt kind of nice to suddenly have a sister. I'd always wanted a sibling. We could hang out together, gossip, go shopping. OMG! This was going to be so much fun. But turns out it wouldn't be as fun as I'd hoped. One night, Eliza was watching a movie. I sat down next to her and said, "Oh man, I love this movie, but I can't stand the female lead. Her voice is so annoying." I turned to check on Eliza's reaction, but she stayed stiff as a board. So I continued. In fact, she sounds just like my friend Kayla. Still no replying from Eliza. In fact, she didn't even look at me. Was she even listening? Well, clearly she was, because a few days later, my friends came over, including Kayla. And when Eliza passed us, she said, "Bet that annoying Kayla girl you told me about isn't here, right?" Oh my God. I literally froze. How could she say that right in front of everyone? In front of Kayla? I was mortified. And the worst part was that Kayla didn't want to be my friend anymore after that. Even my other friends stopped hanging out with me. They thought I was just another mean girl. And that wasn't all. Eliza started acting really weird. One day I came home from school to find her in my bedroom looking at my old photos. Then when she saw me, she said in a creepy voice, "You're so lucky you weren't abandoned like me." My God, that gave me chills. Then later that night, I overheard her asking our mom if she could get an allowance to make up for lost time. Oh, wow. But that was only fair, right? Well, the next day, I couldn't find my fave lipstick. And given that Eliza recently had unannounced visits to my room, I went to ask her. But she just shrugged and said, "Yeah, I took it. So what?" Whoa. Since when did she become so rude? Hang on, she was also wearing my floral dress. That was it. I'd had enough. I went straight to my mom and told her what Eliza had done. I expected my mom to be on my side, but she wasn't. She told me to be more understanding as Eliza wasn't used to being around other people, so she needed some time to adapt. That's ridiculous. And then it got even worse. She started to target my dad. "You should divorce him. The way he just left you like that, what an awful husband," she told my mom when the two of them were preparing dinner. "You could claim ownership of everything. You just need to prove that he's cheating on you, or that he's corrupt or something. I mean, he's a politician, so I'm sure he's doing at least one of those things." I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. I stormed into the room and started shouting at Eliza to stop trash-talking my dad. Then I turned to Mom. "Don't listen to her poisoned lies." But Mom just sighed and replied, "Eliza isn't entirely wrong. Your dad did just leave us, and he hasn't even called. Clearly, he's having an affair." OMG, that snake was brainwashing my mom. A few days later, I saw an article that my dad was charged for corruption. How was that even possible? My dad is a good man. There must be a misunderstanding or something. Could it be something to do with Eliza? "It was you, wasn't it? You accused my dad of corruption." I stormed in and screamed at Eliza. My mom was shocked and said, "Alicia, what are you talking about?" So I told my mom that Eliza must have planned this, and my mom said, "Don't be absurd. She has nothing to gain from that. Stop speaking nonsense and apologize to Eliza." Mom, I think I know what this is about. Alicia hates me, so she's starting to make up lies about me. In fact, you should be careful that she isn't a pathological liar or something. Or maybe even worse, she could have a mental disorder. My mom then said, "You're right, sweetie. Alicia, you need help. I'm going to make a hospital appointment for you." What? Was she serious? I tried to convince her that I was fine, but she wouldn't listen. I then turned to Eliza. "You won't get away with this." The next day, my mom tried to get me to go to the hospital, but I locked my bedroom door and refused to leave. But it didn't take long for her to find the spare key, and this time she came back with some dudes next door to help hold me down. I tried my best to break free, but it was hopeless. At that exact moment, I heard my dad's voice. "Let her go." I looked up and saw my dad was with a woman. My mom looked horrified and said, "How dare you bring your mistress into our home?" But my dad said, "It's not what it looks like, honey. This is Eliza, the real Eliza. That woman over there is an imposter. Her real name is Kim." OMG! I knew something was wrong with her. You might be wondering why my dad suddenly appeared. Well, I called him the day before and asked him to investigate Eliza, as I had a feeling there was something fishy going on. He went to the orphanage to get more info, and the sisters there kept saying Eliza was the sweetest woman, and that if he waited, he could meet her. Well, then the real Eliza turned up, and that's when my dad found out the truth. Turns out Kim was once Eliza's roommate. Eliza had moved out, but the sisters at the orphanage didn't know this, so they still gave me the old address. Eliza knew about my mom the whole time as she'd found the letters, but she was still mad about being abandoned, so wasn't ready to meet her. She told Kim everything about my family and how wealthy we were, So when I went by the old address and asked about Eliza, Kim seized the opportunity to steal Eliza's identity. My dad pointed at Kim and said, "I'll give you 10 seconds to get out of my house or I'll call the police. Don't you ever come near my family again." Kim fled immediately, and we never saw her again. As for the real Eliza, well, that was quite the reunion. At first it didn't go well, but gradually Eliza opened up to my mom, and of course my dad's corruption charges were dropped after he was found innocent. He also forgave my mom and moved back in. Eliza visits us often, and I have to say, it's exactly what I hoped having a big sister would feel like. I'm so glad we're all reunited now.
I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters. Thank you. She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. I'm very proud of this one. Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up, then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission? Skateboarding. I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions. But Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous. So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes. You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then, clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty. Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work. Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay, as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also, less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet, so I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, That's pretty good. Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. You should give it a try. This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mum or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mum snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mum told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mum blocked the door. Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand washing. What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, in that case, she can wash it herself. Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told. Through angry sobs, I screamed at her. I wish you weren't my mom! Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own so they could go and work away on their secret mission. We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now. Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted! No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. Jamie, come down here, sweetie. Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, "Yes, I know," then sweetly grinned. I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both. The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay? Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life. So I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, "Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon?" I answered, "I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park." "Did you see my notebook? The leather one?" I shook my head in response. "Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it." She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. "Jamie, I miss you a lot. Can I come over to your house tomorrow?" I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. "We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me." Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barneses. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. "Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you." Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the doorframe to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie. They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all. Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, "I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this." Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, "Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us." He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. "Charlotte, I have something to give to you." Then she handed me a small box full of cash. "This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry." My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. "My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again," I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me.